This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Fanalysts Podcast. Gearing up for week 6 of the NFL season. COVID's catching up, and we're trying to keep ahead of it. So we had a lot of injuries. Again, there's some major injuries this week in week 6 with Dak Prescott and Dalvin Cook. So we'll explore how to handle those, and we'll try to get straight how many games have been delayed so far.
Delayed, moved around, pushed back. We're playing musical chairs with on a week-to-week basis with the schedule at this point.
And if I'm not mistaken, most leagues have, or like I think ESPN and Yahoo that I know of so far have pushed their waivers back a day.
No, it depends on how your waivers work. I read this at least in Yahoo. I know I got an email from them saying it just depends on how your waivers work. I think if it was a continuous waiver, your waivers got moved back, but if you use the standard waiver format that Yahoo uses, then I think you stay the same as, Wednesday's your normal day. I can actually pull up the email, in fact, and read exactly what it is. But it's interesting though, because it obviously makes a big difference in terms of when you put in your waiver, you get a little bit more of an idea of, you get say it's a guy that may or may not, you're decided trying to figure out whether or not a guy is going to miss time or be hampered by an injury or whatever. It gives you kind of that extra day. So here's what it is. It says, for most leagues with default waiver settings, there will be no change to the way we process waivers for weeks with a Tuesday game. If your league uses continuous waivers with a Tuesday clear date, waiver claims will not be processed until Wednesday. If your league has players clearing waivers on Tuesday, waiver claims will not be processed until Wednesday. If your league uses a voting period for trades, pending trades will not be processed until Wednesday. So basically, it's if your clear date was Tuesday, it's now pushed back to Wednesday. But most leagues that use the standard waiver date of Wednesday, it doesn't sound like it's going to change. That's Yahoo. I don't know about ESPN. I haven't really read entirely about them or NFL.com or Sleeper App or any of those. But I wouldn't be overly surprised to see him push back a day, just because, the NFL week is basically pushed back a day because of the Tuesday game tonight, or just because of the Tuesday game. So it obviously does make a difference in that regard. But either way, it's sure weird to see football on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not think the Titans were going to make it to play this week.
Well, I didn't either. And it kind of screwed me this week because I played Mo Alley Cox instead of Jonnu Smith as a result, because I saw Saturday afternoon, they had another positive COVID test in their organization. I'm like, well, shit, there's another one. They're definitely not going to be playing this week.
Did Mo Alley Cox let people down this week? Jeez.
Yeah. That kind of hurt. I played him in FanDuel as well as in my weekly league, and it may end up coming back to bite me in the ass because obviously he put up a 0, and I need Derrick Henry to not put up 18 points tonight. And mind you, it's a league that bonuses galore, so it's very possible for a running back to get 18 points, very possible. So, but either way, it hurt not to be just. This is where this fantasy season really starts to kind of bother me in a way where because the whole COVID situation, the way the scheduling is right now is so fluid and always changing. It's extremely difficult to make a roster decision even the day before, the day of, because of that. Like in the case of Jonnu Smith, where if he is your primary tight end and having to make the decision on Saturday or Sunday whether or not, and mainly Sunday, whether or not you're going to play him, take the risk and play him, instead of just putting in someone else. You could play it in a way where, sure, you can play it safe, and if he ends up not playing, and I know some leagues have a rule where if a guy gets ruled out because of COVID, then the lowest scoring player in that position on your bench gets automatically put in that roster spot. Granted, it would have made no difference for me because I would have had a 0 either way. But It just makes it so difficult to put your roster together on a weekly basis as a result. And even for DFS plays, it makes it a little bit more difficult to grab the guys who have been big value plays like a Jonnu Smith this year and find them and put them in the right spots. And then now you are having to look elsewhere when that was a guy that you knew you were getting good value from week in and week out. And it this week in particular, it came back to bite me in the ass because what I thought was a good value play in exchange for Jonnu Smith was Mo Alley Cox. Well, he let me down.
He was I'm ashamed to say my tight end start of the week last week.
You're just hitting home runs with those starts of the week, man. Let me tell you. Isn't that every week now you've had a bust start of the week?
Yeah, you're not gonna get 100%.
I know you're not gonna hit 100%
every week.
You're not gonna hit them all.
When I bust, I bust.
You really do. That's
There's no like, oh, I said he started the week, only got like 15 points. No, like it's either like he puts the start of the week numbers, or you wish you didn't start him at all.
Yeah, or yeah. But I mean, a year like this though, it just tells you, just really goes to show how much better, at least in the here and now, a DFS format is, because there's just so much changing and so much at risk on a week in and week out basis with the whole COVID situation. Things constantly fluid and changing. And you just don't know what to do. Like I don't know how to set my lineup every single week now. And now I have to look, I have to basically play. I don't even know what to call it. I have to basically play, connect the dots with where I'm going with my roster for the next few weeks because of how much the league schedule has changed. So I don't even know how to like I had a strategy for my bye weeks, and when I always develop a strategy for bye weeks when I draft a team and when I look at my lineups, and now that's been thrown out the window. So now I don't even know what I have to look at in the upcoming weeks. My matchups are all messed up because things change so much. So
this is why I'm definitely was the liking way to go this season.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm liking DFS more and more this year in particular. And honestly, I wouldn't hate the idea of keeping some of my leagues DFS entirely moving forward, just because I like DFS. It puts more pressure on you, and frankly, as much as I like waiver wire and like doing that stuff, it allows me to have in my everyday busy life, it allows me to have a little bit more time on a weekly basis. Just Monday through Friday, I have a lot more time. Saturday, Sunday, obviously, I can devote more time to DFS, but like Monday through Friday, I have more time. I have more free time.
I mean, you still like, whether it's DFS or like a regular ESPN league or Yahoo league or whatever, you still have to devote time to just, taking in football information. Like,
well, obviously,
you can't just turn the brain off completely for the whole week and then expect to be like in the know come Saturday. But
obviously,
you don't have like the waiver wire and stuff to worry about when you're doing DFS. But you do.
I don't have to scour my matchups in the way at least the way I play my DFS weeks. I don't include the Thursday games in any of the contests that I play in. So I really don't even have to pay attention to two teams in those games.
Yeah.
So and honestly, and even some of them, I don't even pay attention to the Monday night game. I don't even play. I just play the Sunday games, and that's what I like to do. And that's
I love playing a Monday night guy like in DFS just to give me that one little last bit of hope if I'm losing.
Right.
Oh man, but so. In terms of waivers this week, well, before we get to waivers, actually, let's talk about the injuries before I kind of jump the gun on that. So Dak Prescott, he's done for the year. It was a pretty bad looking, I think it was an ankle.
Yeah, that did not look pretty. That looked extremely painful.
How are you rushing to pick up Andy Dalton?
Honestly, with the weapons that team has, I actually think I might be picking up Andy Dalton. I'm not. It depends on your quarterback situation. If you're in a situation where you've got two solid quarterbacks or one really good quarterback, I'm not exactly rushing to grab Andy Dalton. But this is honestly probably the best weapons he has had in his career, and he has put up good numbers in the past. The Cowboys have a pretty good offensive line, fantastic weapons to throw the football to, a legit running game to lean on if he needs to, and an aggressive offense. So I think the sky could actually be the limit for Andy Dalton, and I think they are going to rely on him and trust him to throw the football a lot. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of picking up Andy Dalton right now.
Yeah.
This is probably the best offense he's ever played in.
That you do have a point there. And he was solid coming in for Dak when he when he did come in. Like nothing spectacular, but
he
did
came
his
in
job.
cold.
He did his job. He didn't.
Right. He came in cold, won the football game, and did what he had to do. I mean, anytime a quarterback comes in cold, it's, I don't expect a ton out of him. So,
But where does this put the value of guys like Amari Cooper or Michael Gallup or CeeDee Lamb?
I honestly think it may hurt guys like Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb just because they're not clear number ones. When you see a backup quarterback come in, you normally see them rely on the top option more. However, Andy Dalton being more of an experienced quarterback in this league, maybe he is a little bit more comfortable spreading the ball around to more of his options. So, I mean, obviously it's a downgrade from Dak Prescott to Andy Dalton. However, I still think that there's going to be enough of the ball being thrown in the direction of those three guys that I think they'll still be at least 80, 85, 90% of what they were. Just because, again, we're talking about an experienced quarterback here. We're not talking about a guy who, we're not talking about Dan Orlovsky coming in or, insert name here. This is a guy who's been around. He's played solid football in the past with the Bengals. He's made the playoffs. He's been to the playoffs several times, and he's succeeded in this league. So he's probably one of the better backup quarterback situations in the NFL. So I don't think you're going to see that much of a drop off for the trio of wide receivers in Dallas there.
I agree with you. You're talking about a system in Dallas that's set up for quarterbacks to succeed, and you're right. Andy Dalton is not just some rookie or second or third year quarterback that doesn't have much experience in the league. He does have a ton of starting quarterback experience. So I do agree with you that I think Andy Dalton is a guy you pick up if you're in need of a quarterback, and I do agree with you that while I don't think that guys like Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb or Gallup are going to have 100% of their value, I do agree that it's not going to be they're not going to lose enough value where you're going to try to want to trade them or something like that.
Right. No, I still think they have, at least Amari Cooper has wide receiver one upside and potential. I do think he'll be right there. Maybe he, instead of being like I think he's like a wide receiver 6 or 5 right now. Instead of that, he may drop down to like a 7 or 8. But he's still in that wide receiver 1 territory. CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup will still flirt with high-end wide receiver 2 upside on a week-in and week-out basis. I don't see that much of a drop-off for that receiving trio.
I agree. Looking at the injury of Dalvin Cook, he had a groin injury. He may or may not miss week 6.
He is going to be getting an MRI. I haven't heard the results of that yet. I am a Dalvin Cook owner myself. I am just lucky enough to have also drafted Alexander Madison, so I am sitting pretty, not panicking whatsoever.
You're one of the smart Dalvin Cook owners.
Yes, I'm one of those Alexander Madison truthers out there. I think he's equally every bit as good as Dalvin Cook is. I think he's every bit as good of a playmaker. He may not be as good of a pass catcher, maybe. I don't know. But
I mean, he looked great filling in.
He did. He absolutely did. But I'm an Alexander Madison truther. I always have been. Like I said, I think he's every bit as good as Dalvin Cook. I don't think they'll miss a beat there whatsoever.
And that goes to my point that if for some reason Dalvin Cook's available, even if it's just for this 1 week, you're talking about going against. Alexander Madison. You're talking about going against the Atlanta Falcons, who are one of the worst defenses right now in the NFL.
I actually think they are the worst defense in the NFL.
I definitely make a move to pick him up this week. Especially if you're a Dalvin Cook owner.
I personally believed before that Alexander Madison should have been owned in all leagues just because of the history of Dalvin Cook.
I agree.
And to see Dalvin Cook go down with an injury, I mean, the proof's in the pudding with what we saw this past week with Alexander Madison. As soon as Dalvin Cook went down, guess what? Madison went off. And I expect to see more of that. I expect them to have no problems relying on him. And I think he absolutely is going to be successful this week.
Yeah.
Especially against an Atlanta Falcons team that just fired their head coach. So they may be a bit of a mess.
Last injury news with Dwayne Haskins benched and then Kyle Allen actually getting hurt in the game. The
return of Alex Smith, baby.
Alex Smith had to come back in. And the question is, though, I mean, it was a feel-good story. It was just a feel-good moment seeing Alex Smith play football again. Because
the fact that he went
from... That
from...
was a very real possibility that he wasn't going to play.
Not just that. He went from a situation where he could lose his leg.
He went from a situation he could lose his life.
Right. And then, having to make the decision of leg salvage or amputation. And then, just a couple of years later, the dude's back on a football field. That's ridiculous. But it's a fantastic story. It's wonderful.
To you, if Alex Smith is a long-term starter here, does that decrease Terry McLaurin's value at all? Because he's quietly been one of the better receivers in fantasy. Specifically under Dwayne Haskins, but Terry
McLaurin has been pretty damn good. Honestly, though, I really don't think so, because I think Terry McLaurin is just head and shoulders better than every other pass catcher on that football team. And I think Alex Smith knows that and knows who his weapon is, and I think he's going to rely on him. Yeah. I don't think Dwayne Haskins is, I don't. It's not like Dwayne Haskins is Tom Brady here. He's not this insane quarterback. He's not Kurt Warner throwing the football, slinging it to Isaac Bruce out there. He's below average, and having Alex Smith come in, I don't think we're seeing that much of a drop off there. So as much as I feel for Alex Smith, he did not look great coming in. He didn't, but when has Dwayne Haskins ever really looked all that great either?
True.
So I don't think there's that much of a drop off from Dwayne Haskins to Alex Smith, and I think as he gets a little bit more comfortable in the situation, I think things can only get better. So I have no problems leaning on Terry McLaurin still if I'm an owner of his.
Mm-hmm. I'm wary, as I actually am a Terry McLaurin owner, and I am very wary of the situation. Alex Smith looked fair. I mean, again, you could say the same about Dwayne Haskins.
It's his first game in 2 years.
That's what I'm saying. He looked very off in his first game, but so I'm wary about.
Give the man a break.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm wary about it because I don't know how confident I am starting him until I know that Alex Smith has at least returned somewhat to form.
See, the argument is, though, he is the true number one in that offense. I mean, who else is Alex Smith going to throw the football to?
No, you're right. He is,
and that's why I feel like he's just one of those guys that you can continue to rely on. Maybe he doesn't get you wide receiver 1 numbers like he's been putting up, but at the least he's got to have a floor of a wide receiver 2, right?
You would hope.
I would think so.
He only had 3 catches for 26 yards on Sunday.
I mean, okay, sure. He had a tough. Who'd they play this past week?
The Rams.
Hey, okay, yeah, all right. He drew Jalen Ramsey. All right, give him a break. Give him a break. That defense is mean. They're evil. Anybody sucks against that defense. So I'm not all that worried. Just because he has one bad game against arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL in his quarterback's first game in 2 years after damn near losing his leg, I'm not hitting the panic button on Terry McLaurin whatsoever.
Yeah, and I will say, if you have Terry McLaurin in your roster, chances are you drafted him decently high. So it's not like you probably don't have a great option in his stead if you're benching, unless you have a really good bench or if you're in a 10 or 8 person league.
Right.
So obviously don't bench Terry McLaurin just to bench him, but I'm just saying I don't think he's an auto start at the moment.
I think he is an auto start. Anytime you got a guy who's been putting up wide receiver 1 numbers, you have to start him. You can't not. I think you have to start him. Maybe he, don't expect wide receiver 1 numbers as much right now, but let's be real though, their upcoming matchup is against the Giants.
Yeah.
And then following that with the Cowboys, then they got their bye. I think the next couple of weeks you've got pretty damn good matchups with Terry McLaurin.
You do bring up a good point that they do have 2 very nice matchups.
And then following that, their matchups coming up. Their next 6 weeks. Giants, Cowboys. Easy matchups. Bye week. Giants, Lions, Bengals. That's an automatic start week in and week out. That's a start of the week. I love how you stop right
before Dallas again. They got Dallas again. We talked after the Bengals.
Right. So I mean, you've got 6 straight games where they've got a good matchup there. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about Terry McLaurin going forward. I think he's fine.
You bring up a good point. I think you may have convinced me.
All right. I feel better. I hope I made you feel a little bit better.
All right. Want to talk about some waivers?
Before we get into that, I want to kind of go back to the whole schedule changing conversation here real quick. Just kind of looking at things and seeing how many games have been moved around and games canceled and pushed back. There is a very real possibility that this season could end up going 18 weeks or 19 weeks even before we see a conclusion into the season and we start hitting the playoffs. So obviously that's going to have even more ramifications on the fantasy football season, because we're going to see more. If we start seeing games pushed back beyond week 17, what's that going to mean for some of these matchups in a year-long fantasy league? You know, how, if you were a commissioner of a league that had games, entire games, pushed all the way back to the end of the season, what do you do there? You know, do you elongate your fantasy football season for 3 games?
Like,
I don't think you can.
Here's the thing. It's going to have to be programmed into it's going to be something that gets programmed into whoever's hosting the league, whether it's CBS, ESPN, Yahoo, because even if you decide to elongate your season, like there's going to come a point where you still need to have your playoffs. And
right.
If the app's not programmed to give you more than 17 weeks, then you might be screwed. So like it's gonna have to come from the system itself.
And the thing is about it too is this is where I feel like the yearly league this season is just not the way to go, because I know right now it hasn't been game breaking, so to speak, that we've had a game canceled or pushed back or whatever. But as we start to see 3-4 games in a week get pushed back, maybe added on to the end of the season, that's game breaking. That's matchup breaking. You may one player missing, you have a guy to fill in for him. But if you're missing guys week in and week out, that is game breaking. That is something that alters the course of your season as a fantasy owner and as a league. So, that just makes screams even more why you should be having switched your format over to a DFS, because it is going to end up getting it to a point where this does break your league.
I'm curious to hear how many people have had if they're in a money league. I'm curious to hear how many people have just made it a free league this year. Mine
did. We from the start of the season, we said, because this isn't a league that, I mean, there's good money up in this league, and it's been this way for a decade. They've always played this way. They've always had this buy-in, and this year they said, the commissioner and everybody talked about it, they said, hold on to your money until we can kind of get a better idea of what this league of what this football season is going to look like. Well, now that we've seen COVID actually affect things, it's a free year this year. I talked to the commissioner. I said, what's our plan for this? And it's a free year. Nobody's, there's no prize money in it this year. It sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the fact that's the reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm. And and honestly, I feel like, as a commissioner myself, I feel that's the way it should be, because it's money that it doesn't feel earned it. It doesn't feel like,
it doesn't feel right, because
there's way too many there's already a lot of variables when it comes to fantasy football and betting on it. But
now you have to plan for the possibility of someone catching a pandemic, like a virus that's part of a pandemic, and not having their game played as a result. Like, even if it's just like a random offensive lineman that has zero factor in, say 4 or 5 backup special teams players catch COVID and they end up having to push a game back as a result.
Yeah.
That has zero factor in, like, immediate factor, like firsthand factor in your fantasy football season, because those guys aren't on your roster. However, because the game got canceled or pushed back, that has a factor on your roster. So it's, something that doesn't even involve your player could in fact end up hurting you.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the waivers here before we take up too much time with that. But do you want to kick things off, or do you want me to?
I kick it off. My waivers are predominantly wide receivers this year.
Also wide receivers predominantly. I have at least one of every position except tight end. I don't have any tight ends.
Same. All right, I guess I'll kick it off then. I'm going to kick it off with Travis Fulgham.
I like it.
Wide receiver out of Philly. He's played 2 games with Philly so far, and he's had nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. And he exploded last game for somewhere around 150 yards and a touchdown. So there's a lot of injuries in that Philly receiving core. And right now it's looking like with those injuries, Fulgham is slowly finding his way at the top of that depth chart.
I don't necessarily think it's even slowly. He's been there 2 weeks, and he's gotten back-to-back touchdowns or touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He's got 200 yards in 2 games. I mean, that ain't exactly slowly reaching the top of that depth chart.
what I'm trying to say is, from what we've seen from the first 2 weeks, I think you can really make a case that he's going to find a permanent
role in the offense.
He's going to find a permanent role in the offense. Is exactly the phrase I was looking for. Even when Alshon Jeffrey or Deshaun Jackson come back.
And the thing is, too, with Travis Fulgham is he is a different receiver than Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey is more of a possession big receiver. I think that Travis Fulgham is a very different receiver from that, and he's obviously cemented himself as a primary option for Carson Wentz to throw the football to, and he is clearly very effective. So and being owned in only 0.2% of ESPN leagues, I think that's a guy you do got to target. Anytime a guy puts up 10 catches for 152 yards and a touchdown, not to mention touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, there's obviously something that Carson Wentz sees in this guy and Doug Peterson sees in this guy that we aren't seeing. So I absolutely think Fulgham is the guy you go after. I'm going to actually go to quarterback here, and I'm going to throw Andy Dalton onto the fire here. Obvious reasons. He's only owned in like 0.2% of leagues, and I'm surprised he's even owned in that many. It's the best offense he's ever played in. He's got weapons galore between Zeke, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup. I mean, he's got weapons all over the place. He's able to. He's been to the playoffs 4 times with the Bengals, so he knows how to play the quarterback position. This isn't a guy that comes out of the scrap heap. This is a guy who is an experienced quarterback, knows how to play the ball. That is a very aggressive offense, and I think with the way how bad their defense is, he's going to be forced to throw the football a ton also. So I think Andy Dalton is a guy you absolutely could make an argument for picking up right now, especially if you desperately need a quarterback.
I'll ping pong off your quarterback thing. I have the same quarterback as you, but I'll throw another one out as a streamer for this week. Kirk Cousins against Atlanta. I think he has a golden opportunity. I think he has a golden opportunity to light up the scoreboard. And if you are in need of a quarterback for Week 6, I think Kirk Cousins is an interesting play.
I'm going to the wide receiver position here. I'm going with Chase Claypool.
There you go.
He had a massive week this week. 7 catches on 11 targets, 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ben Roethlisberger seems to like this kid. He's a rookie wide receiver who's clearly shown that he's a legitimately good football player. And this week was a
man amongst boys.
This week was his big coming out party. Anytime you put up 3 touchdowns, that's something to keep an eye on. So only owned in 8.9% of ESPN leagues, and I think that number should jump by at least 40% this week. So I would absolutely be rushing to grab Chase Claypool. In fact, I am rushing to grab Chase Claypool and dropping Russell Gage for him. So,
I'm going to throw out another wide receiver. He may or may not be available in your league, but he is available in the majority of ESPN leagues, technically. He's 48% owned, but Henry Ruggs. If someone in your league was foolish enough to drop Ruggs, if someone in your league was foolish enough to drop Ruggs while he was injured, take advantage of that.
Yes.
Ruggs came back this week, had a fantastic outing, and I think he's going to be a major part of that Oakland offense, not just for the season, but for years to come. He's a big dynasty play. I'd try to grab Ruggs if he's available for sure.
I'm going with one that we've mentioned week in, week out. I'm pretty sure we've thrown him on every single week of this podcast, except maybe week 1. And I don't know why he's still not owned in at least 50% of leagues, but it's Laviska Shenault for the Jaguars. This guy continues to just be good. He just continues to be a good wide receiver. He's got a great matchup this week up against the Lions, who are not a good defense in any way. He's only owned in 31.1% of ESPN leagues. Please, just go pick this dude up. He's a good wide receiver.
I'm going to move over to the running back position real quick, and this is another guy that's going to end up really being a streamer because I don't think Dalvin Cook's injury is going to be prolonged. But Alexander Madison for this week, he could be a week winner for you if he's on your waiver wire and you're able to pick him up.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. I have him on my list. He had a big week this past week, 112 yards and 20 carries after Dalvin Cook went down. So,
yeah,
those are the types of numbers that a guy like Alexander Madison can put up. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. I think he is every bit as good as Dalvin Cook. I'm going back to the wide receiver position. I've got McCole Hardman for the Chiefs at 37.5% owned in ESPN leagues. Sammy Watkins went down with an injury this week, expected to miss a couple of weeks, and McCole Hardman has been a big play threat. Anytime he's been put in the spotlight for that Chiefs offense, and they're looking to have a revenge week after losing to the Raiders. So I'm looking at McCole Hardman to be a pickup this week, because he has the home run ability for sure.
Yeah. That's all I got for waivers. I don't know if you have any more.
No, we ended that perfectly. That's all I got too.
All right, then. Let's move on to start and sits.
Yeah, let's do it. Starting with the quarterback position, I'll kick things off. I've got Deshaun Watson going up against the Titans. Titans defense has given up a lot of points to quarterbacks this year. It's a good matchup for Deshaun Watson, who, with the new head coach coming off of his first win as a Titans head coach with Romeo Crennel, the oldest head coach to ever win a football game. I expect Deshaun Watson to have a solid week. I think this game could put up some points, and I think Deshaun Watson is going to be a big beneficiary of that. So I like number 4 in that Texans uniform this week.
For the second week in a row, I'm going to go Ben Roethlisberger against Cleveland. That Cleveland defense has, through 5 weeks, has allowed 3 QBs to go for 3 or more touchdowns already. So
I
Ben Roethlisberger
love that pick. I had him on my list, and I took it away because I figured you were going to take it anyways. I love that pick. And not just that though. The way that the Cleveland Browns offense has woken up, and also relied more on the pass. Just game script should dictate the Steelers will throw the football more. So I'm hoping to see Ben Roethlisberger have a big week, and I expect it to happen. But my next start of the week is Matthew Stafford going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars secondary is dog shit. It's doo-doo. Dumpster fire. I expect Stafford to have a very solid, very big week. He's got Kenny Galladay fully healthy now after he got 2 weeks to get his legs underneath him after an injury, plus the bye week. He's fully healthy, ready to go. Marvin Jones ready to go. TJ Hawkinson ready to go. DeAndre Swift another week in that system. I am ready to see Matthew Stafford fully unload on this Jacksonville Jaguars defense this week.
Okay. Let's have some fun. I'm taking the other side of that. Gardner Minshew against Detroit.
I like it. I think he's got like 2 or 3 straight weeks of 3 touchdowns. I like it.
Lions are allowing 21.3 fantasy points per game to the QB position. That includes garbage-ass Mitch Trubisky. So I'm
now
pretty
is on the
confident
bench for the Bears.
Week. Yes.
I like Gardner Minshew a lot this week. He's going to be a very cheap and fun DFS play, let me tell you. Going on to sits here. My first.
I have not a start.
Oh, dude, 3 quarterback starts. Look at this guy doing extra.
It's raining QBs today. We already mentioned a couple times. Kirk Cousins against Atlanta. Atlanta is averaging 371 total yards allowed to QBs and 2.5 touchdowns per game.
That's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point you got to say maybe we throw the ball too much if other teams are getting that many pass yards on us. Maybe we need to change our game script.
True.
But my sit of the week this week, switching on over to that, is Joe Burrow going up against the Colts. Colts defense looks damn good. I know they had a tough week against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, but that Colts defense is still a legit defense, and Joe Burrow, being the rook, is going to have a tough time against it. I don't like the matchup here for that one. I know he's been pretty solid, a borderline start week in, week out, but I don't think he's even worth a look this week.
I'm on the same exact boat as you. I got Joe Burrow as my sit of the week as well. I'll add on to it that the Colts are only allowing on average 1190 yards to the QB position through the first 5 weeks.
Ouch.
That's
very
QB
different from 371.
No QB has even hit 250 yards against the Colts.
Wow.
So far this season.
All right. I have actually one more sit at the quarterback position, and it's Tom Brady against the Packers. The Packers defense has been rough to quarterbacks, very mean to quarterbacks. And I don't think, and I'll be honest with you, I think that Buccaneers offense is a little bit fraudulent. I don't think they're very good at all. They got shut down by the Bears. I think they're solid. I don't think they're great. And I think the Packers defense has been very mean and very good against quarterbacks. So I don't like that Tom Brady matchup this week, especially still, again, you have a hampered wide receiver duo with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They're both still dealing with injuries. So I don't like that matchup at all.
All right, let's move on to running backs.
I'll let you start it off.
I'm going to start off with Alexander Madison against Atlanta. You're talking about a team that's on average allowing 100 yards and a touchdown to the running backs. So I'm taking it. Give me Alexander Madison.
Low-hanging fruit, I see. He is another guy I'm going to be looking at in DFS this week. But my start of the week is going to be James Robinson going up against the Lions. Lions
Yep, that's my
defense
second start of the week,
still
so
not good
page.
at stopping the run. I know they've had a solid couple of weeks against, whatever, but they're still no good. Don't be fooled. They're not. They can't stop the run, and James Robinson's going to prove that once again this week. I definitely would be looking to start him for sure.
I'm going to hit you with more numbers on that one.
Yes, please do.
On average, the Lions are allowing 127 total yards and 2 touchdowns to the starting running back. I'm not saying all running, just the starting running backs.
That ain't pretty. I'll let you, take the next one here.
Yeah, you're going to be sensitive theme here. I'm going. My sit of the week is going to be, unless you have another start.
I do have another start.
Okay, then
I'm gonna start. I'm rolling with Melvin Gordon and the Broncos this week up against the Dolphins. Dolphins defense is garbage.
I think that game got moved.
Oh, it did.
Yes.
Oh, well. Then never mind. I don't have another start. It did. I thought that wasn't one of the games.
I think that's one of the ones that got moved.
Was
I think.
it?
The Dolphins are playing the Jets this week now.
Oh, see, this is what I'm talking about. My matchups are all screwed up now. All right, well then, ignore me. Let's go ahead and move on to the sits.
I'm going again with the theme: Joe Mixon against Indiana. More numbers for you. Indiana is only allowing 75 total yards to running backs. That's total yards and half a touchdown. So not even a touchdown a game to running backs. And Joe Mixon has had an up and down season already. I'm not confident and I'm not even confident the game script going his way. So
he is also my set of the week. I know he had a big week not long ago, and they rely on him a lot. But that Colts defense is not friendly to running backs. I don't like the matchup at all. I don't think that offense for the Bengals is going to look very pretty this week. But my next set of the week, because you took that one, is going to be Kareem Hunt going up against the Steelers. I don't love the matchup. The Steelers defense is very good against running backs, and I know Kareem Hunt is a guy they're going to rely on, but I do think that after what the Browns saw this past week where, hey, we know how to throw the football, I think they're going to continue to ride that train. So I don't think the game script is really in Kareem Hunt's favor here, and the matchup's not great either. So I don't like him going up against the Steel Curtain in Pittsburgh.
I like that. I agree with you on that, actually.
Wide receivers?
Wide receivers. So let's
take it away. Oh, you want me to kick it off? All right, I'll start with Adam Thielen going up against the Atlanta Falcons. In fact, I'll even throw Justin Jefferson in as a bonus. And I know Justin Jefferson had a bad week last week. I think he has a resurgence this week because, as you mentioned, the Atlanta Falcons are giving up 371 yards per week in passing to quarterbacks, and obviously the top two guys for top two pass catchers for a team are going to be the beneficiary of that. So I like both Thielen and Justin Jefferson this week. They're, in my opinion, must starts this week.
I'm taking the other side of this game. I'm taking Cal Ridley against Minnesota.
Oh, you bitch!
Minnesota's on a bit of a hot streak.
You took my next one.
Minnesota's allowing a 100-yard pass catcher in every game so far this season. And with Julio Jones-Hobble, I think that guy is going to be Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley has very quietly been one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football this year. I think he's actually like wide receiver 3 right now. He's been stupid good, and I think that continues this week. I also have Calvin Ridley going up against the Vikings. But that is all my starts and sits for wide receivers. Do you have another one?
Yeah, I got another start, a wide receiver. I'm going OBJ against Pittsburgh.
I like it.
Pittsburgh allowed 102 yards and 2 touchdowns late in week 1. They allowed nearly 100 yards and a touchdown to I forget who in week 2, and 152 yards and a touchdown to Fulgham this past Sunday. OBJ, I mean, the Steelers defense, don't get me wrong, I still do think they're better than what I'm painting out to right now. But that pass defense has been abysmal. I think OBJ has a field day.
So here's where I will agree and disagree at the same time. The pass defense for the Steelers isn't necessarily abysmal because they aren't good again, because like they're very good at stopping quarterbacks from putting up a ton of points. However, against the guy who is the clear top pass catcher of the week, that they're going up against, there's always just one pass catcher per team that just goes off against the Steelers, and everybody else is just rendered irrelevant. So between Jarvis Landry and OBJ, just hope you pick the right one this week, because one of those two guys.
I'm just going the one. I just picked the one who had the least targets, and that was actually, believe it or not, OBJ. So,
regardless of whatever, just hope you pick the right one this week, and because it's a gamble, it's a 50-50 shot. One of those two guys will go off this week against the Steelers, but the other one may not even see the football. But it is a gamble. But there is almost a guarantee that one of them has a very big week up against that Steelers defense. Tight end, I do have one start.
I got to sit for.
I got to sit also.
Receivers.
I have a couple of sits actually.
Keeping with the theme, Tyler Boyd against Indiana. We talked about this with Joe Burrow, only on 190 yards through the air. I don't see any room for Tyler Boyd to actually do anything.
I've got Allen Robinson against the Panthers. Panthers defense has been very mean to receivers and quarterbacks also, I believe, if I remember right. Running backs, anybody can run on that team. But against receivers, I don't love the matchup for Allen Robinson. I don't expect him to have a huge week. Plus, that offense just is not very good. Nick Foles is just not a very good starting quarterback, and the rest of the offense has looked no good. And nobody's scared of David Montgomery in the backfield either. So I don't love Allen Robinson's matchup against Panthers. And then I'm actually going to go to the other side of that matchup as well. Robbie Anderson is a sit of the week for me up against the Bears. Whoa. I know Robbie Anderson's been real good lately, but that Bears defense is vaunted and mean and not friendly to wide receivers, so I don't like his matchup here. Tight ends?
Tight ends.
Kick it off.
I'm taking T.J. Hockenson versus Jacksonville.
I like it. I was going to do that one, and then I was like, I feel like I've talked up T.J. Hockenson enough this year.
I think this might be my first week that I made him a start of the week. But the Jags defense is allowed.
I think I did week 4. Week 4.
So the Jags defense has allowed the second most receiving yards to tight ends at 352 yards, and they've allowed 4 touchdowns to tight ends through 5 weeks. I mean, I think Stafford's going to have to err on this game, take advantage of that weak Jazz secondary, and I think T.J. Hockenson is going to be a prime target for that, I would hope. So T.J. Hockenson is my start of the week.
I agree with you. I like T.J. Hockenson a lot this week. Mine is more of it's a guy that I would trust to start. Obviously, he's probably not your number one tight end, so you may want to start someone else over him. However, he's a guy that I'm going to be looking at as a big value play in DFS. If I want to go cheap at tight end and go big elsewhere, this is a guy I'm going to look at, and it's Dalton Schultz going up against the Cardinals. In the past, we've seen Andy Dalton make guys like Tyler Eifert look like Antonio Gates in the red zone. Mm-hmm. And so he loves his tight ends when it comes into the end zone, when it comes into the red zone and in the end zone. And I think Dalton Schultz could be a beneficiary of that. Plus, the field's going to be wide open for him. And on top of that, the Cardinals haven't been good at stopping tight ends in like 4 years now. So I don't think that's going to be any different this week. I think Dalton Schultz has a very good shot at grabbing a touchdown this week. So I like Dalton Schultz a lot as a big-time value play at tight end.
Do you know where to start, or are you more to sit?
I'm going to sit.
All right. I got George Kittle against the Rams.
Okay.
That Niners offense, as of week 5, is suddenly in shambles.
Well, okay. Jimmy Garoppolo was not healthy by any stretch of the means.
That's what I'm saying, and it looked terrible.
Uh-huh.
And the Rams defense has actually been really good against tight ends this year.
Against tight ends, they've been really good.
They've shut down everyone they've gone against, including Ertz, Ingram, except for that weird anomaly week 3 against Buffalo where they allowed 3 tight end touchdowns. Don't know where that came from to guys like Tyler Kroft and Logan Smith. So, but other than that, they've shut down everyone they've gone against.
That's another guy. That's another reason why I like Dalton Schultz this week. Andy Dalton managed to make Tyler Kroft a guy who still has a job in this league.
Yeah. True.
But my set of the week is actually the other side of the ball in that game is Tyler Higbee against the Niners. Niners have not given up a ton of points to tight ends, very little in fact. And Higbee already is behind the ball in terms of who gets the football in that offense. So Higbee's not a guy I'm going to look at this week at all, especially not in DFS. I'm going other ways, and I'm going other directions with that offense here. So Tyler Higbee is my set of the week at tight end position.
Yep. Moving on to defenses. So I got one defense for you.
I have one as well.
Because I like to aim for the defense that are probably going to be available on waiver wires or going to be cheaper DFS plays.
That's exactly how I structured as well.
I'm going Carolina against Chicago.
I like it.
Their secondary has actually been pretty strong, and I think they should be able to contain Foles, and the Bears' run game isn't strong enough to expose that.
Bears' run game is non-existent. Let's call it what it is. So
I think it's a safe play against Chicago.
I do too. I don't think you're going to get any type of huge numbers out of that, but I don't think you're going to get beat with that. So mine actually is one that has kind of surprised me a little bit, but it's the Washington football team going up against the Giants. The Washington football team defense isn't great by any stretch of the means, but that D-line is pretty good. So you may end up seeing a few sacks here, maybe a forced turnover. Daniel Jones turns the ball over like crazy. That Giants offense is straight up hot garbage, and they give up a ton of points to defenses. So I like the Washington football team as a potential streaming option who likely will be available on your waiver wires or cheap in DFS. So that's one I'm going to look at this week for sure.
I like that. That's all I've got.
That's all I've got as well. We managed to kind of breeze through that this week.
Oh, yeah.
So, but anyways, though, guys, that is going to close it out for this one. We thank you guys for hanging out with us once again this week. Check out our other show, Detroit centric. If you're into Detroit sports, the Fan Report.
We did talk a little fantasy this week.
We did. We talked a little fantasy, a little COVID, little something. But Andrew, thank you for joining me, and thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast as well. Follow us on Twitter @RealFanReport is where you can find us, and we will catch you guys next week. Thank you once again. Peace out and good luck.